All right, I am here with Clifton Brown, who will soon be honored as an inductee into the Black Sportswriters Hall of Fame. Mr. Brown, just a brief introduction for him. An accomplished golf writer, covered the bad boy Pistons, among many other things. Uh, Mr. Brown, just starting off, what does it mean to you to be inducted into this Hall of Fame?
It's really overwhelming, inspiring, and humbling. I know some of the men and women who are in the hall already. I worked with Bill Rhoden and Clara Smith at the New York Times. They were inducted last year. Michael Wilbon, who was inducted last year, a writer I've always admired. And this year I'm going in with three gentlemen I've known for years, Rob Parker, Ron Thomas, and Gary Howard. So it's really special to me to be among this group. As they say, your peers honoring you really makes it even more special. And yeah, I'm just overwhelmed to be here tonight.
In terms of your roots, I know you briefly talked about it, family with some triad connection, if you will. What does it mean for you to have this ceremony at North Carolina A&T, close to where, you have that family connection?
Right. My father was born and raised in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I used to come down to Winston every summer to see my grandmother, to hang out with my cousins. So Carolina's always had a special place in my heart. Also, my father went to HBCU. He went to Clark Atlanta University for his master's. He went to Johnson C. Smith for his undergrad. My wife is a Howard University graduate. I started my first 2 years in college at Howard University. So HBCUs are dear to us. North Carolina is dear to us. And it's really kind of full circle for me to come here for this ceremony. My first plane ride was out of Greensboro Airport in my life. I was 21 years old for my first job in Boca Raton, Florida. My cousins took me to the airport in Greensboro. I flew to Florida. I got the job, and now I'm back in Greensboro to go into the Black Sportswriters Hall of Fame.
I know I very briefly touched on your career, but in terms of your career, how would you summarize kind of your climb from your starting point to being able to cover the major events and, big time teams like you're able to do eventually?
Well, being in the right place at the right time certainly has something to do with it. My career started to rise to the national level when I became the Detroit Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press, the Bad Boys, Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, that crew that won back-to-back NBA titles. They were loved in Detroit, hated everywhere else. And every game covering the Pistons felt like a game 7. And so covering that team brought the things I was writing to national prominence. This was before the internet, so when they made the NBA Finals against the Los Angeles Lakers in 1988, everyone who covered the NBA was going to come to Detroit for that series, and they saw the things that I wrote. And so that really raised my profile. And after that series was over, the New York Times called, and I ended up going to New York to cover the NBA. I covered the Nets, the Knicks, and then the league in general. And then I made a big switch in 1997 to cover professional golf after Tiger Woods won the Masters.
I was about to say, when you said 1997, that was the first thing that entered my mind, maybe because of this week being the Masters, just happened to be so by coincidence. But being there, that was a very significant victory for Tiger Woods. What did it mean to be, to cover that event and the history behind that?
Well, I covered 7 Masters. I actually started right after he won the first Masters. That's when I was named the golf writer. So my first tournament was Tiger's first tournament after he won the Masters, the Memorial Tournament in Ohio at Jack Nicklaus's course. It's the first time I'd ever covered a golf tournament. I had never met Tiger Woods, and Tiger Mania was going crazy because he just won the Masters. So the first time I ever met him was after his round on Thursday. Him and his entourage went into the clubhouse and went upstairs. And after about a minute, I went upstairs, found him between lockers. He was just sitting there kind of reflecting on his round. I introduced myself to him as the new golf writer for the New York Times. I don't think he was expecting that to come out of my mouth. A security guard showed up a couple of minutes after that, acted like he wanted to throw me out of the clubhouse. And to Tiger's credit, he was like, "No, it's okay. He's talking to me. It's all cool." We ended up talking about. He told me I wasn't supposed to be up at that level of the clubhouse. The media was barred from that area. I didn't know. I said I used to cover basketball. We talk to people in the locker room all the time. He said, "You covered the basketball, the NBA?" So then I started telling him stories about Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas. We talked for like 10 minutes, and that conversation to me kind of set the tone for us having a relationship for the next 7 years, where if I needed him for something at a golf tournament, we would figure out a way where we could have 4 or 5 minutes alone where I could get the things I wanted, because I had a lot of respect for him, and he's always acted like he had a lot of respect for me.
In terms of your career, I mean, this might be a tough question, but in your eyes, what are maybe your proudest achievements, things that you look back on and say, I'm really happy I was able to do this or achieve this?
Yes, I would say over the course of the 19 years I spent in the New York Times, I had 6 sports stories that made the front page of the New York Times. One of them was when Magic Johnson returned from announcing he had AIDS and retiring to winning MVP of the All-Star game in Orlando. I was there. It was a great moment, very emotional. Everyone, wanted to see Magic do well. He did, and he ended up winning the MVP, and they put that story on the front page. So that's one that sticks out. Also, I hope that I've opened some doors for other black journalists. When I left the Free Press to go to the New York Times, another black journalist, who unfortunately is no longer with us, Drew Sharp, he took over as the Pistons beat writer. When I left covering the PGA Tour to cover the NFL for the New York Times, another black golf writer, Damon Hack, succeeded me, and he now works for the Golf Channel. So I don't think those things would have happened for them. Maybe they would have, maybe not, if I didn't do well in the job. But I think part of me doing well in the jobs I had opened the doors for others, and that's something I've always wanted to do.
How would you compare the climate for a black journalist or aspiring black journalist when you were kind of first entering the industry versus how that situation has evolved over time, into more current times?
Yes, I think it's better in some ways, but not as good in others. I mean, the business has changed so much since I started in it. And now with the internet and people doing podcasts, there are actually more avenues for all young journalists, black people, women, to get started. However, there still seems to be a ceiling to me of how far you can go sometimes if you're black, if you're a woman. People who make hiring and firing decisions at networks, at newspapers, at internet sites aren't always as diverse as they should be. So we still need to work on that, in my opinion. And it's something that, this means a lot to me, being part of something like this, because I really feel we're in a time where some people are trying to erase black history or change black history, change the narrative. And we have to protect our history and teach our children about black history. Something like this is a part of that.
I know you talked about it a little bit, some of the obviously huge names that you've been able to cover. Some of I know you mentioned Tiger Woods, Magic Johnson, of course, all those great Piston players. Is there a story you would like to share, maybe one of your favorite journalism stories that maybe people might not know?
Well, one story I tell a lot is I did a story on Michael Jordan after he came back from retirement. He retired the first time, went to play baseball, and then decided to come back to the NBA. So I had to do a story about him coming back to NBA. I went to a preseason Bulls game in Quad Cities, Iowa, and met him there, talked in the locker room to him. He was great to me. He was talking about all summer. That was the summer he made Space Jams. And so he spent all summer in California. They built a dome for Michael to train. And then next thing you know, NBA players are coming out, and in breaks in the set, they're playing full court games to get themselves in shape and to get Michael back in shape. So after he tells me all this, gives me a great interview, I was on my way out of the locker room, and he called me back. And he said, when you get back to New York, you tell Patrick Ewing he should have won a championship when I was gone. I'm back. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's back.
If you had to give a young black journalist or even just anybody that is striving to make it in this business, what kind of advice would you give them?
Work hard, don't quit. My mother was the first black woman to graduate from Temple University School of Pharmacy. My father from Winston-Salem, he was a World War II veteran. He went all the way to New Guinea on the other side of the world and fought in World War II in one of the most bloody battles in World War II. When he came back to North Carolina, there were restaurants he couldn't eat in, schools he couldn't go to. They figured out how to make it. My parents weren't about making excuses. They were about making things happen. And that's the attitude you have to have, I think, in any profession, whether you're black, white, male, female, it doesn't matter. If you really want this badly enough, there's always going to be peaks and valleys. I'm in the Hall of Fame. I've been laid off twice. I've had valleys in my career. We have things we go through in our personal life. But if you want to realize your dream, realize the road is not always going to be smooth. And it's not really whether you get knocked down, it's how you react and get back up.
You may have answered my next question a little bit there, but what in your eyes was maybe the biggest adversity you had to come, and what were you able to do to climb out of it or overcome it?
That's a very good question. I think the time when my career really changed was when I was working in Detroit for a few years. I was still covering high schools. I thought I was good enough to get a shot somewhere else, and we had a change in sports editors. And when the new sports editor came, he told me that he had been reading my stuff, he liked the work. I thought he was just saying that to everybody who came. But soon after that, he moved me from the suburban office to the downtown office. I started doing all types of different sports, helping guys who had a day off or when something came up. And I realized that if I had not worked hard covering those high school events, and he read those and they were just okay, I never would have got this opportunity. So sometimes you have to be patient. For me, things have never happened when I wanted them to, but sometimes they eventually happened in a much different way than I expected. So yes, during those times in Detroit when I was still covering high schools and was frustrated, I was sending out resumes. I was thinking about maybe I don't have what it takes to be a big time sports writer. I did. I just needed an opportunity and have the fortitude to stick to it.
Mr. Brown, thank you very much for your generous time. I know a busy day, and appreciate you, coming to us for part of that. Before heading out, just what are you looking forward to most in terms of the activities tonight in the ceremony?
I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of people who I don't get to see that often. I've heard from so many people, family, friends. Some of them will be here tonight. Other people who I've worked with or people I used to see covering events. It's really not just about me. To me, this is a celebration for everyone who's played a role in my life. There have been so many, too many to name. I've run out of ways to say thank you, but at least I'll get to celebrate this with a lot of them tonight.
Mr. Brown, thank you again for your time, and congratulations on getting into this Hall of Fame.
Thank you so much.